Hi Lisa, well obviously we're in level 4 lockdown at the moment, so the place is pretty deserted in general, but as you can see behind me there's a heavy police presence here at the scene, and you can see some cars in that car park too. Those are people that are still waiting to get out. Some of them are still needing to give statements to police, and they say that they'll get most people out in the next hour or two, but police say that the mall will be shut for the next couple of days as things move forward, if not the next week or two.
What can you tell us about the injured?
So there were 6 people injured at the supermarket by the man that was shot by police. 3 of those are critically injured and at Auckland City Hospital. 1 is in a moderate condition at Waitakere Hospital, and another person is in a moderate condition at Middlemore Hospital.
And have you managed to speak to any witnesses?
Yeah, there's a lot of distressed and shocked people here at the scene this afternoon. Most people could obviously never have envisioned something like this happening in their neighbourhood. Most of them out shopping at their local supermarket in level 4 lockdown for their essential shopping. I spoke to Michelle Miller just before she was about to begin hers.
I was actually originally going to go shopping into Countdown. I saw this guy running around attacking people. It was just absolutely horrific. I feel sorry for the Countdown staff. I feel sorry for the people that were actually hurt here today. My prayers go out to them. The police have done an amazing job. They let the guy try and give himself up, but he wouldn't. It's really sad that they had to do what they had to do, but at the end of the day they were thinking of their safety as well, and my heart goes out to these police here today. They've done an amazing job.
Sure. So when you say you were going shopping, were you in the Countdown at the time?
I was just about to go into the Countdown, yeah, and I left my car and went down to go back to my car because I was pretty shaken up.
Yeah, and when you say you saw him attacking people, what did you see?
Just running around with a knife, and I mean, then he just lost the plot. Whether he was on drugs or whatever he might have been on, I do not know, but I stand by the police on what they've done here today. They gave him an opportunity to give himself up. He didn't want to. And I don't want the people thinking that these police are out there just shooting people randomly. That's not what happened here today. The police done really well. They worked their hearts out. And I will give my hand over to these cops for what they done today. Yeah.
Did you see anyone that was injured coming out?
All I heard was a lot of screaming. I heard when I went down to my car, I heard the gunshots going off.
And
yeah.
What was the atmosphere like when you were going to your car?
The atmosphere going to my car, there were so many people standing around. I think they were all absolutely beside themselves. They can't believe that this could be so close to home.
And that was a witness who was inside the mall at the time of the attack. Meanwhile, Anya was inside the mall also at a pharmacy for a vaccination as the drama unfolded.
I just heard that someone was getting stabbed, and then I heard like 6 or 7 gunshots.
Whereabouts were you, Anya?
I was waiting just outside the pharmacy in Middlemore.
Yeah, and what brought you into the mall today?
I was getting my COVID vaccine.
Okay, and so how far away is the supermarket from where you were?
About like 20 metres.
Yeah, and can you tell me what could you hear? Could you hear people talking or yelling, and what sounds?
I could just hear the people at Chemist Warehouse just yelling that there was someone getting stabbed. Then like a bunch of security people started like approaching the area, and then I just heard gunshots, and it was just very chaotic.
Pretty scary it sounds like too, Anya.
Yeah, it was. I tried to stay as calm as possible.
And where did you go?
I went inside the pharmacy. So mostly everyone who was just waiting there just ran into the pharmacy and what hid in the little rooms.
Yeah, tell me about that. Whereabouts did you go exactly?
So they're like these the rooms where you get the vaccine. They're like real small, but we went into those. There were about like 7 of us in the room, including like a little baby.
And did you lock the door, or what happened?
Well, there was no lock on the door, so this one guy just like stood near it, and he kind of like used his upper body to like stop it from opening.
And what were people saying in the room?
People were literally just panicking. Everyone was like calling their family. Some people called the police. They were just all trying to stay calm.
Did you call anyone, Anya?
Yes, I called my dad because he was waiting for me in the car park.
And what did he tell you to do?
He just told me to stay where I was, and he said that he'll meet me outside.
Subham Prasad was also coming to the mall for his vaccination.
The people who were running,
And
they
what?
all were condom stuff, I guess. They all were running, and I just got a hit from someone that there's still there's a few people inside that killing people, something like that. I don't know.
What were the people saying when they were coming out of the supermarket?
They're saying that people killing inside.
What did you do?
Oh, we just because we came to get vaccine. That's why we didn't go over there. We just walk away from there.
So did you hide anywhere, Shabam? Or
Yeah, we try.
and what else could you see? Could you see police? Could you hear any other noises?
No, I didn't hear any noises like screaming, nothing like that. That's all I see, just people running like crazy.
An Auckland man out for a walk near Lynmore saw armed police descend on the scene. Mike Norman was on Great North Road when he saw an agitated woman in a vehicle blocking the Lynmore car park exit and yelling out for the police.
I only got about 200 metres and the police started turning up in force. They just were all screaming into the car park. I couldn't see anything that was happening. There was 3 ambulances and 2 paramedic cars that turned up. And then the vendor squad, obviously. Obviously, it's Countdown they were going into, or looked like it. I didn't see anyone coming out of Countdown. And then initially I thought, if they haven't got whoever it is contained, I'm safer here. And then I thought, well, obviously, whoever it is contained, because they're not letting anyone into the area. So I left for my own safety.
Paul Turvey was just leaving Lynmore when he heard someone yelling out, "They've got my cell phone." He initially thought it was some minor dispute going on.
And then everybody started running, and the customers were running, and the staff were running, and then some people were running back. And at that stage, I started to get quite scared. It was quite contagious sort of atmosphere.
Was there screaming? Were people anxious, scared?
People were extremely anxious. It was a great sort of an atmosphere of panic. And I gather that's because somebody was shooting.
It is 5:15. Kia amo tonu mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. If you are just joining us, there's been a major incident at a Countdown in West Auckland this afternoon. We are standing by for the Prime Minister and the Police Commissioner to give a press conference from Parliament, and we will go to that live as soon as it happens. But this is what we know. Things started to unfold at about 3 o'clock this afternoon. A man entered the Newlands supermarket and appears to have injured multiple people. He was located inside the supermarket by the police and shot dead at the scene. 6 people have been injured. 3 of those have critical injuries, and those people have been taken to Auckland Hospital. Another person has also been taken to Auckland Hospital, 1 moderate patient to Waitakere Hospital, and another person taken to Middlemore. Remember, Auckland is still at level 4, at COVID alert level 4, and those hospitals are under pressure with a number of Delta patients. Witnesses report hearing several gunshots fired, and there were waves of panicked customers, they say, running from the store and screaming. Also, witnesses say they heard people shouting about a stabbing. Another witness says the man was carrying a knife. Other customers were inside the mall at alert level 4 queuing for their vaccinations at a nearby pharmacy, and several of them barricaded themselves into a back room at the pharmacy. There was no lock on the door, so they say that some of the customers blocked the entrance way. AOS is on site, and we heard from our reporter Louise Tanuth that the police are still there in force. Some people are unable to leave at the moment because the police are still taking witness statements. The mall will be closed for several days, if not longer, and some vehicles are still stuck on site as the police clear the scene. As information comes to hand, we will bring that to you. And as I say, we are waiting for the Prime Minister and the Police Commissioner at a press conference in the Theaterette at Parliament. We'll go there as soon as it happens. In the meantime, New Zealanders are being urged to avoid becoming complacent after daily recorded community cases dropped to 28. Of those COVID cases, 27 were in Auckland, 1 in Wellington, who was already in managed isolation at a quarantine facility. The Director of Public Health, Dr. Caroline McElnay, says more work needs to be done, but it's a good sign.
While this fall in today's numbers is encouraging, we are mindful that these outbreaks can have a long tail and we can't afford to become complacent. Ongoing investigations by Auckland Regional Public Health has resulted in the total number of unlinked cases falling from 65 to 31. That work is continuing and we expect that number to continue to fall.
There are 43 people in hospital, all in the Auckland area. 9 are in ICU or high dependency units, and 3 are currently being ventilated. So far, 33 people have recovered since the outbreak, and there are 731 active cases. Dr. McElnay says there's been better news with contact tracing.
Good afternoon. This afternoon at approximately 2:40 p.m, a violent extremist undertook a terrorist attack on innocent New Zealanders in the Newland Countdown in Auckland. This afternoon I want to share what we know about this event, but also what we know about the terrorist. But first I want to acknowledge the 6 innocent people who have been attacked. 3, I understand, are seriously injured. This was a violent attack. It was senseless, and I am so sorry it happened. The attack began at 2:40 p.m. and was undertaken by an individual who was a known threat to New Zealand. The individual was under constant monitoring, and it was the police surveillance team and special tactics group who were part of that monitoring and surveillance that shot and killed him within, I'm told, the space of roughly 60 seconds of the attack starting. For the detail of the events today, I will pass to Commissioner Andrew Costa to provide detail of the Special Tactics Group operation. I'll then say more of what we know about the terrorist and the government's efforts to protect New Zealanders from him.
Thank you, Prime Minister. As the Prime Minister has said, this individual was under heavy surveillance as a consequence of concerns about his ideology. Today, he travelled from where he lived in Gleneden to the Countdown in New Lynn, as he had done before. He was closely watched by surveillance teams and a tactical team to monitor his actions and behaviour. He entered the store as he had done before. He obtained a knife from within the store. Surveillance teams were as close as they possibly could be to monitor his activity. When the commotion started, 2 police tactical operators from the STG moved to his location and engaged him. When he approached them with the knife, he was shot and killed. I acknowledge that this situation raises questions about whether police could have done more, whether police could have intervened more quickly. I'm satisfied, based on the information available to me, that the staff involved did not only what we expect they would do in this situation, but did it with great courage. The reality is that when you are surveilling someone on a 24/7 basis, it is not possible to be immediately next to them at all times. The staff intervened as quickly as they could, and they prevented further injury in what was a terrifying situation.
Thank you, Commissioner Costa. I want to share some additional information. This information is not as complete as I would like for reasons I'll expand on shortly. The terrorist is a Sri Lankan national who arrived in New Zealand in October of 2011. He became a person of national security interest from 2016. The detailed reasons he is known to the agencies is the subject of suppression orders made by the court. In my view, it is in the public interest to share as much as we can in this case. I'm seeking advice on what we can do to facilitate that sharing of information as soon as possible. What I can say is that we have utilised every legal and surveillance power available to us to try and keep people safe from this individual. Many agencies and people were involved, and all were motivated by the same thing, trying to keep people safe. I know there will be many questions about this case, and we need to confront and address each and every one of them. And there will, as a matter of course and good practice, be multiple inquiries, including the IPCA, and importantly, the coroner's inquiry. It is not my intention, though, to wait for these reports to release what we can, but they will provide additional insight into this attack. Before I open up for questions, what happened today was despicable, it was hateful, it was wrong. It was carried out by an individual, not a faith, not a culture, not an ethnicity, but an individual person who was gripped by ideology that is not supported here by anyone or any community. He alone carries the responsibility for these acts. Let that be where the judgment falls. Jessica Ventoba.
The Police Commissioner mentioned that the officers prevented more happening. Maybe this is better for the Police Commissioner. What was planned? Can you give us a scale of what the person was planning to do?
We've had absolutely nothing that would tell us the extent of his intentions, or indeed that he had particular intentions today to go and do this act. Based on our surveillance, what we could tell is that he was undertaking what appeared to be a normal shopping expedition. However, clearly we have been concerned about his ideology, and that's why he was under surveillance and with accompanying tactical teams to be able to intervene.
People sitting at home, they'll look at this and say, if he was being surveyed and so closely watched, why were 6 people able to be injured before he was shot? Can you explain that?
This individual is very surveillance conscious, and surveillance teams working with an offender over an extended period of weeks need to maintain sufficient distance for that surveillance to be effective. So they were as close as they possibly could be without compromising the surveillance operation.
So this is someone that has been closely monitored, and so as the Commissioner has said, there was nothing that we're aware of at this point in time to indicate that what he was going to do today was going to happen today. But obviously, because he was being closely followed and watched, they were there at the vicinity in the supermarket at the time that this occurred.
Prime Minister, sources just told us that he was recently released from jail. Can you confirm that? And Commissioner, just following on from Jess's question, if this man was on a terror watch list, why was he allowed in the community?
I had prepared a timeline of everything that we know of this individual and his interaction with our agencies and the law. I've been advised that because of suppression orders, I can't share that with you today, but I do undertake to go away and find a way that I can share that with you. I think it's in everyone's best interest that I'm able to do so. I just can't do it right now.
Do suppression orders apply to the deceased, though?
Unfortunately, when they're issued by the courts, it's the court's order.
Okay.
So as I've said, I prepared a timeline for you that I wanted to share, and I intend to share with you. I just unfortunately need to go through a process before I can.
Commissioner, following that question, why was someone who was on a terror watch list allowed in the community?
I'm confident that we have done absolutely everything we can within the bounds of the law and operationally to ensure that we could prevent what occurred with this individual, but there was nothing to prevent him being in the community. and we were doing absolutely everything possible to monitor him, and indeed the fact that we were able to intervene so quickly in roughly 60 seconds shows just how closely we were watching.
When we're in the position to do so, you'll see at every point, every attempt we've made to use the law to the greatest extent we could. The fact that he was in the community will be an illustration of the fact that we haven't succeeded in using the law to the extent we would have liked. That is why he was being closely monitored at all times. And so that is, given he was in the community but being closely monitored at all times, he had a surveillance team monitoring him and a special tactics group that you can see was at the supermarket at the time he was there. I'll let you finish that question.
Does that mean that that mosque that's been cordoned off was also under police surveillance? And I think a lot of people will be concerned about a backlash against the Muslim community. Perhaps
that would be wrong. That would be absolutely wrong. The community here has been nothing but helpful and supportive. It would be wrong to direct any frustration at anyone beyond this individual. That is who is culpable, that is who is responsible, no one else. Jane.
Accepting the suppression orders, what can you tell us about the motivations or the ideology?
Violent ideology and ISIS inspired.
And you're confident he was a lone wolf actor?
Yes.
You're not looking for anyone else in relation to this?
No.
Prime Minister, can you please go over what you said when you said we're not using the law as much as I would have liked to in this case? What measures would have you liked to see put in place?
No. So we've utilised the law as to the full extent we've been able to, I think was the point that I was trying to make. And he was obviously in the community, and as additional protection, we had that surveillance team who was also monitoring him as well.
So this man, was he an ISIS sympathiser?
Well, that's he obviously was a supporter of ISIS ideology. So however you choose to describe that.
Are there many other people like this in the community? I mean, how many people are there like this?
I consider this is an individual who was known to multiple agencies. A range of efforts were undertaken around this particular individual. There are very few I would classify in this way.
Do you have any indication?
Yes, I was personally aware of him. Yes, I was. Yes, I was.
Do you have any indication?
Can we just clarify? You said that the officers were in the supermarket at the time that the man began his actions against the attack?
They were as close as they could be.
Does that mean they were inside the supermarket?
They were able to hear when the commotion started, so they were very close by.
Is there any issues with the footage?
Jessica, then I'll come back to Jane.
Is there any issue with the footage that's being circulated at the moment in relation to them, if they were part of that team? Like, are there any...
Is it compromised, the officers?
Compromised or anything like that?
We would ask media to be responsible about what is published now to protect the identity of our people, but I'm not saying that any of the people in the video are or aren't.
And were any of the people injured, were they police officers?
I don't believe so.
No, the people injured are believed to be shoppers.
I'll come to Jane, then back to Tova, and then into the front.
Do you have any indication of how long it might take to get those suppression orders lifted?
I'll need to seek a little bit of advice on that. I also want to check whether or not, how far they extend. As I say, my view is that it's in everyone's best interest to put out all of the information that we have available to us and all of our knowledge of this individual and his history here, given that you'll see that he's been known to us since 2016.
This man, it's fair to say he's been in the courts in the last year, though. Is that right?
I won't, if you'll forgive me, if you just give me the time to go through the process in order to give you a full history rather than jumping into speculation around timelines.
Do you regret not bringing forward proposed counter-terrorism law changes now? If you had terrorism control
It would be,
in the community, could that have assisted?
It's purely speculative to say whether or not any difference in our law or indeed any of the law changes we're pursuing now would have made a difference in this case.
The Royal Commission of Inquiry said that there was a clear gap in dealing with people who were of concern.
And we'd already been progressing that. That law change is coming back from Select Committee, due to be back in the House. So that was underway. But it would be really speculative of us to make an assumption here that what happened today would have necessarily been prevented by a law change that we're currently progressing. Again, I'll highlight that of all of the tools that we have, constant monitoring and surveillance is one of the, outside of someone being in prison, is one of the strongest that we have, and that is what was attached to this individual.
Prime Minister, just for our public on what you've talked about before, like many still will be asking how many are out there with these known threats in the community.
Yeah, let me give that assurance. While of course you'll know that the general practice of course is not for us to get into that level of detail, I can tell you that, that there are not many who fall into this category. This was someone who was known to our national security agencies and was of concern and therefore was being monitored constantly. There are very few who fall into this category, and I can give you that assurance.
Prime Minister, is it correct to say?
This attack?
No.
Is that less than 10?
Oh, but very, very few. Of course, that is not to say that we are not vigilant. You know, New Zealand, unfortunately, as with other countries, we have seen through multiple tragic circumstances now that we are not immune to these things. But having said that, individuals like this are not widespread in New Zealand.
Just for the public
No.
asking though, is that several people?
You'll forgive me. It's not. It would not be appropriate for me to start numbering off for New Zealand's national security to start doing that. But it is very few people who I would determine to be in this category.
Is it right to say that he was on a terror watch list since 2016? And did you find out about him recently from the SIS when you were briefed when he was released from prison?
Again, I'm not going to give a timeline of some of those engagements with the law because I want to make sure that I've got the clearance to share everything with you. But that's what I'll be seeking to do. I can't give you the exact timeline. I've known about this individual for some time, but obviously the agencies have too. He's been monitored for some time.
And how long was he considered a threat?
As I've said, since 2016.
So I know I've asked it already, but why was he allowed in the community?
Because by law we could not keep him in prison. So he was being monitored constantly as a result of that. Again, if I can release that detail later on, we will.
Is there going to be any changes to the terror alert level? And
No, we remain at medium.
do you have any concerns about do you have any concerns about retaliation?
That's not something that I can comment on, but I've been advised that our security level will remain at medium. Yeah, sorry, Luke, I'll come to you. And then
you said that he was a Sri Lankan national. Was he also a New Zealand citizen?
I will be looking to see if I can provide further information around his immigration status at the same time as we provide further information around his engagements with the law.
Understood, because if he wasn't a citizen and he was on this watch list, why wouldn't a person like that have been deported?
I can tell you that agencies were using every single possible means available to them to protect the New Zealand public from this individual, every single possible means. And if I'm able to, I will share all of that information, both the legal side of what we tried to do, but also other parts of the law that were accessed in order to try and provide that protection as well.
What are some of the markers? Why did he end up on this watch list in the first place? What are some of the markers? What were some of the red flags that got him being watched?
His interest in extremist ideology. And so, of course, the law was again used to pursue that as well. And I'll try and provide a breakdown of that when I'm able to. I'll come in the front and then I'll come to you, Jessica.
Just to clarify for those lay persons, how can suppression orders apply to the deceased?
It's a question for the court as to whether they lift a suppression order. The suppression orders don't tie to the person, they tie to the court's order, is my understanding, and those are the issues that need to be worked through.
And Prime Minister, just for you, considering you personally knew about this man, did your heart sink this afternoon when you heard the news?
Yes, because I know that we'd been doing everything we could, everything that we could. And so, yes, I was absolutely gutted.
Prime Minister, this person has been monitored closely, as you say, for 5 years. The cost of doing that must have mounted into the millions. Do you know how much yet?
Well, again, you'll see that there are different ways in which this individual has been monitored. And again, that's the kind of information I'll look to try and provide you as soon as I'm given the ability to do so. But the very, very close monitoring has been in more recent times.
And back on the fact that this violent terror suspect was allowed in the community. Is it your view, Prime Minister, that the judicial
And just keep in mind the reason that he was in the community was because of our inability through the law to have him anywhere else. So that will give an indication of his past behaviour and action. It did not, unfortunately, reach a threshold in the law for us to be able to have him in prison. So that is why monitoring was being used.
Is it your view that the justice system has let the country down, or?
Well, as I've said, we used every element and lever in the law that was available, and when he was in the community, that constant monitoring of him, to the point that at the time that he visited the supermarket, he was being watched and followed. But again, there will be a chance for us to look at every single lever that was used and what, if anything, more could have been done. But as I say, watch to the point that the police were there with him at the time that this happened. You know, that level of surveillance was being provided because of the concerns that we had.
Does he have family here in New Zealand?
I can't answer that question.
Commissioner Costa,
Can you outline,
please,
please,
the
the
legislation?
Jane, I'll come to you.
Please outline the legislation under which he was being surveilled. Was
We
it the
ha-
Search and Surveillance Act and the 2002, I think, terrorism legislation? Were both of those acts
This was
in
a public safety operation, and police are able to undertake surveillance of people who are suspected of or considered high risk of criminal activity. So there were a range of provisions being used. Some of those I can't talk about, but there were a range of provisions being used.
But the orders wouldn't have covered him because they were for returning people. So the recent orders, you wouldn't be able to use those, for example,
No.
the monitoring?
No.
So can I just check that it was terror-related legislation as well as, for example, search and surveillance? Is that correct?
Yeah, but just the one thing I'll just say is that, of course, if we'd reached a threshold for him to be in prison, he would have been in prison. If he had committed a criminal act that would have allowed him to be in prison, that's where he would have been. Unfortunately, he didn't. That is why, instead, he was being monitored constantly, and followed. But unfortunately, otherwise, he had not committed an act that allowed us to have him in prison.
Please, Commissioner, can I just clarify, please,
Beyond using legal tools and surveillance, I mean, was anything else being done to dissuade him of his beliefs or try to
Yes.
prevent?
Yeah.
Can you detail it?
As of course, as you would have imagined, that if you identify someone in 2016, then it's not just a matter of that being someone that's known and then nothing happens. There was activity around that person.
Commissioner, just for our viewers at home, can I please
clarify?
clarify?
I mean, is there any, have you tried to counter that sort of violent extremism in his head?
That will become apparent in the fullness of time. It's hard to describe individual aspects of this without looking at the full timeline, and those are the things that we really need to be able to release once that's legally concerned.
I will start trying to wrap in a moment because I know many of you have to file, but Thomas.
Of the people who have been...
sorry, Mark. Forgive me.
Of the people who have been injured, are any of them understood to be staff at the mall? And what is it all... was there any firearms injuries or was it all just...
Forgive me, that's not information I have. I'm not sure if Commissioner Costa...
We believe, and bear in mind that we're still gathering information, we believe the people who were injured were members of the public, not staff, and the only firearms involved were those held by the police officers who shot the offender.
Commissioner,
Luke.
sorry.
Say Luke, and then I'll come over to...
Had this individual planned a terror attack prior to this incident that we know about?
Again, these are pieces of information that we'll look to share as soon as we can, but again, I'll just re-emphasise, had he done something that would have allowed us to put him into prison, he would have been in prison.
I understand that, but so you can't answer that at the moment?
Not at the moment, but we will put out, but again, the fact he wasn't in prison should in part help answer some of the questions that you're asking me.
Please, Commissioner, I just have a couple of questions, please. So with the people that were injured in this attack, there was no specific demographic for those people?
No, we don't have that information as yet, no.
Do we have all ages? Were they only adults or did it involve any children?
I'm not aware that any children were involved, but that information will be released as soon as we have it. It's very important to say in this case that nothing that has occurred today gives us reason to believe there's any further threat or risk to the public as a result of this situation. It was a lone actor. We have dealt with that person. We know from our extensive monitoring that he was acting alone, and so people do not need to feel concerned beyond the immediate event, which in itself is incredibly shocking.
Can I get total clarity
Last
as
one.
well? Every time this individual left the home, police were watching him from a distance?
Yes, we have been actively watching his movements for some time.
How many times was he shot by police, Commissioner?
I know that 2 officers were involved in shooting him. I don't know how many shots were fired as yet.
Ben.
Prime Minister, do you think this will lead to calls for Australian-style deportation laws on character?
There's some complexities to this particular case, But I can tell you that we were pursuing every option that we had available. But again, I think probably that's something we might be able to get into a little further down the track.
We're hearing about some of the actions of the members of public who were in the supermarket at the time. One man is described grabbing nearby tea towels and children's nappies to try and help the wounded. What's your message for those who mucked in to try and help?
Oh, to everyone who was there and who witnessed such a horrific event. I can't imagine how they'll be feeling in the aftermath, but thank you for coming to the aid of those who needed you when they needed you. All right, everyone, I think we'll wrap for today, and we'll look to provide you at least an expectation of when we might have some answers on when we can provide that further information. Unfortunately, with the time available, we were simply advised that we couldn't say what we wanted to, but I'll be looking to put that information out as soon as possible. Thank you.